Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heal the Industry. I am so excited to have you today on the podcast. I have a very special guest, and we interacted on social media. I saw what it was she was doing inside of her business was serving the clients that she serves inside of the beauty industry. And I reached out to her on social media. I was like, girl, I would love to have you on the podcast and share what it is that you are doing. So without further ado, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience and our listeners.
So my name is Bria Alston. I own Sacred Beauty Spa and Apothecary. I have recently kind of become an influencer educator. It was not something that I ever thought that I was going to do or saw for myself, but God was like, here you go, we're going to do this. um, I am so passionate about holistic aesthetics. I just was sitting here this morning, like thanking God that my job never feels like work. It is just truly such a joy and such a passion. I'm also very passionate about helping women to heal holistically, not through feeling overwhelmed or pressure to be someone or be a certain way, but just by like planting seeds, just helping them to live a more abundant life. And my ministry encompasses all aspects of the whole body, mind, spirit, and skin. I I have a background in nursing, and then I'm also trained in administering inner healing and deliverance, Holy Spirit filled prayer sessions, and just helping people to sort through things and reflect in a safe space. I incorporate this prayer and inner healing into my facials and treatment room, and that's kind of where I'm at today. God is just like, all right, Bria, I have taught you all of this, and now I'm ready for you to share this so that other people can, start working this way. And probably, I mean, a lot of people that I meet that are interested, they're already working in this capacity. It's just like some of this, stuff that is new to them that God's bringing to the table. So yeah, that's me.
Love it. I love it so much. When I think back to several years ago, before I started putting my faith on social media, it was something I definitely kept to myself because it was something that was so personal to me. And I was almost scared to put it on social media because it's not a common thing in our industry. It's starting to become more common. Thank you, Jesus. And it makes me so excited. But for you, I'm curious, at what point did you started bringing your faith into what it is that you are doing and how you serve the clients that you have in your space?
Well, when I was in beauty school, God had just pulled me out of kind of a pit that I was in, depression, anxiety, all the things. And so in that season, he was really working on me and changing a lot of my habits and my patterns and my, things that he wanted to get more aligned in my life. So when I graduated school, I knew that I was deeply in love with him and what he was doing in my life. And I wanted to share that. I didn't necessarily market myself as a Christian esthetician. I just was like, this is who I am. And when, because I think part of my fear in that has always been potentially deterring people based off of what they've perceived God to be or who they've perceived God to be, or, religion. And I just, because I'm very much just a lover of people and, just type, God meets people where they're at, and so I, that was kind of in that season in Dallas, God was growing me in spiritual gifts and wisdom and revelation and knowledge. And then when we moved to Mississippi, so that was, probably almost a 10-year span there in Dallas. And then when we moved to Mississippi, I shut everything down for a season. I kind of went into one of those just me and God seasons. And as I began to pray and ask God, what do you want for this? It became a full-blown ministry. Then it became, we're going to establish a place of my dwelling that those that are seeking an encounter through this experience can come and meet with me. And along with that, he, just made me bold in my voice and my presence on social media. And I kind of had to approach it from like, I'm just going to keep my eyes on you, God, and not worry about the rest.
Yeah.
And you know what? It is what it is.
Yep. Yeah, it's like, before we got on and we were talking like on the podcast, we were speaking on how like I recognize there are seasons where I'd get out of my own way and be more in a place of God and just like let him move through me. Because a lot of times it's like the enemy that tries to hold us back and keep us back because of potential scarcities that might come our way, but it's not truth because God is truth, right? And it's a beautiful place to be in freedom of your faith and how you serve the clients that come to see you. It almost becomes a safe place who maybe people have experienced that more man-made religion than what is truly God, to be able to come and experience what that's like, especially in a space like where they're being made to feel better in a service that you offer. Like their walls are more down. Do you experience that? Like that walls like maybe come down more for you to be able to reach people in more their like inner work while you're working on their outer?
Do you mean just from them being in this type of setting?
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100%. And it's not something that I ever foresaw God doing. I didn't know that he knew already how amazing this pairing would be. But yes, people come in and they get in the bed, and we start with just some breaths, some aromatherapy, prayer. I invite the Holy Spirit in. I'm like, look, he's here. Open your mind and your heart to encounter, to release, receive. Don't let the enemy steal this time through rumination and worrying. Like, just breathe and let God. And through that, then God starts to move. I just
Mhm.
keep my ear listening for whatever he wants to do. It's never from performance or wanting to make something happen, but just because if some people just may need that space to be quiet, and then God's going to speak and he'll do it. Some
Yeah.
people may be so burdened in life in that season that they're not hearing God really well. And so maybe God wants to speak through me into that situation so that they can be reminded that, hey, he's not way up there. He's right here. He sees
Mhm.
it and he cares and
Mhm.
he wants to help. And I think that's what's always been so special about when people come here. They come here, especially since I've made it a ministry, kind of expecting, but they leave in awe, and me too, of what he actually poured out,
Mhm.
because we just made a space to meet with him and he had so much waiting to give. And I just like, it's just beautiful. Like, it's absolutely beautiful. And it's so honoring that, to be a part of.
Right. Well, and in listening to this and this experience, like I start reflecting back on when I was pregnant with my son, and my husband and I, we lived in Portland, Oregon, and we moved to Dallas. Dang it, our paths didn't cross at the same time. I'm like, oh man, I would love one of these experiences. Um, but who knows? You never know.
Right.
Might make my way on up to Mississippi sometime.
Yeah.
But I remember when I was pregnant with my son, and my husband had gotten me this like mommy spa package, and I was going to get a maternity massage, a facial, a pedicure, and it included lunch. And I will say too, with lunch, it was the best sandwich I've ever had in my life. I was like, oh my goodness, this is hitting so hard. But anywho, when I was getting my facial done, because being a hairdresser, I'm a chatty Cathy. Like I talk all of the time. It's my natural state of being. But I knew that I was going into this season of I'm gonna be a mom, it's my first kid. I need to just quiet my mind and just relax. And so I forced myself during the facial to just not talk and just lay there and receive. And when you're talking about this, like how sometimes things come up, but sometimes things don't, but still, even in those moments, like so much, like God's doing so much in that. When I left my facial, my stepmom had gotten me this like Victoria's Secret hoodie, and it was back when they did like the embellishments on like the back of the hoodies, and it was wings on the back of the zip up hoodie. And the lady who had given me my facial, and she was so great. She wasn't a chatty Cathy. She just held space for me to just like relax and enjoy. She came up to me and she was like, so normally I don't tell people this about myself because I want to be respectful and I don't know where people's like beliefs are or anything. But after I saw the back of your hoodie, I was like, no, I have to go and tell her. She said, while I was giving you your facial, I saw that you were just surrounded by angels. And I feel like you're going to have a really special baby. And I just remember like being a mom who's about to step into a new journey of like new identity, not knowing what this is going to look like. Am I going to mess up? Like I didn't have the greatest examples like growing up. So, and I know I want to do better, but I feel so unqualified, right? Going through the season. And I was feeling all of that, like when I was getting my facial done, because I had quieted the space enough to have those moments come up for me. And for her to come up to me, and I'm so grateful. I wish I knew her name so I could reach out to her and be like, you know how much like you impacted me in that moment. But it gave me like, again, it got me out of self and into a place of peace. It's like my son is who the Lord created him to be. It's my job to create a safe space for him, and he's going to do wonderful, amazing things. And so the pressure isn't on me. It's just to make sure I'm stewarding my son well and I'm raising him in a godly way, and like he's going to do amazing things. And it's so cool today to see his faith is so a core of who he is. Like every single night he's in his journal and he's writing out things. But I just want to like, my hope is like for anybody who's listening and like hearing about these experiences is like, it doesn't have to be like a whole show or a whole thing that you put on. Just holding space for people and like recognizing God's presence in that space, like it has the ability to do the most with you doing the least, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. It does. And that is honestly the only way you ever want to do it, because, for a long time, the Lord, as he was training me, was showing me, you know, the amount of burden we can pick up in this setting. And as someone who loves people and loves to serve and loves God, you're naturally going to want to help. You're going to want to, be empathetic to people's problems, and I would feel like, okay, I'm laying this down, I'm praying, but I still felt the weight of it. And what God finally made clear to me is, you know, you focus on me and sitting still in my presence and allowing me to nourish you, body, mind, spirit. And then out of that overflow will come the fruit that will touch other people's lives. And pray with people and bring their problems to the throne room, but do not take them on, because we're not God. We weren't built or designed to do that. And so, for a while, I think I struggled with my health and, spiritual attacks, mental attacks, in all forms. And it was, through some open doors of just worrying, of being overwhelmed because I was trying to control and carry more than I was ever designed to. And
Mhm.
as God made that clear to me, so many things shifted and, are continuing to shift in my health and my life. But just speaking to that woman that day, I hope that she hears that, because I think that it's so important for us to, recognize our part in serving and our willingness and obedience. But it's like, ultimately, she did exactly what she probably set out to do, which was to be the hands and feet of Jesus. Because it's like so often we never remember the moments with people, right, where they could make an impact, but you never forget a moment, an encounter with God, you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's so true and it's so beautiful. I love how you shared that, because not very many people will put that out there about the weight of like feeling like you have to carry the things that clients are going through. And that's where I see a lot of stylists, unfortunately, like burn out in the industry, or like they completely lose themselves, right? Because it's like you see multiple people in a day and everyone shares their hardships, and they don't teach you in beauty school like what to do with that. Like, we're not trained
Yeah.
counselors or therapists, right? And therapy, or beauty, like it it's a real thing. And people don't talk about that weight, but like when you bring God into it and you recognize like nurturing that relationship with him, he will meet you there. I remember like having to do hard things like as a salon owner, and just like belly aching over like, oh, I gotta have a hard conversation, or oh, when do I do this? There's X, Y, and Z. And and then realizing like, okay, I got to get out of self and I need to get into God, and I need him to show me like the way. And he always has said like, it's that child is mine. Give her back to me. Like, you are my child. I've put on your heart to do this, or you need to like free yourself of this burden because it's not your weight to
Right.
carry.
I mean, even in your explanation, you said belly aching.
Yeah.
You know how many bellies are aching because of this exact situation? Moms who are trying to control every situation and circumstances instead of just trusting in the only one who can. Wives, mothers, estheticians, men, everybody.
Yeah.
Right? And it's extreme. It impacts the gut more than a lot of our diets. We focus so much on the diet, but it's like the rumination, the worry, the stress, the burden. I mean, you know, like you said, it will taking on all of that. It makes us sick. We
Mhm.
weren't designed for it.
Right, exactly. And ultimately it just comes to like letting it go and like being able to hold space without losing self, right? And I just had done a call like talking about like emotional maturity and what that looks like inside of the industry. So that way, I've seen it so many times where people don't recognize this like freedom that they need to be seeking and protecting in their lives. And what ends up happening is like they go down a path of numbing and like, oh, I need to shut it off, or I'm going to go home and I'm just like, don't talk to me. I'm exhausted. I've been carrying this all day. Or they choose to numb out like with alcohol or drugs. And it is the enemy, it's just more and more deep in isolation because you're just carrying it all. And God's like, hello, like, give it to me. Like, it's mine. Like,
Yeah.
not
Yeah. No.
yours. Like, you just get to hold space for people. So I'm curious, is there like a practice that you do on a regular basis for yourself to be able to hold the capacity that you do for the people that come, and like you pray over, you serve, you hold space for?
Yes. So number one is keeping them in God's hands, recognizing that they're his daughter, his son. And if he brought them here, he's gone before me and
Mhm.
he's made fertile ground for the
Mhm.
seeds to be planted. He
Mhm.
showed it to me as like a belt with satchels around my waist where I can just scatter seed, so that it keeps me in that mindset of just being the hands and feet, and keeping them in God's hands. But for myself, it's making sure that I am staying connected to him, staying connected to the vine. The vine is only fruitful if it's connected to the root,
Right.
but so if we get detached, it's going to die, it's going to decay. And so, to do that, when I get up in the morning, I've made a habit now, especially as an entrepreneur, to have structure and a plan, but like you said earlier, make space for God to change things. So I say, God, I know what I have planned today. What do you have planned today? Is there something you want me to do?
Mhm.
And you know how often he slows me down in that moment and says, you need to rest, you know? And I say that because if I'm not resting and not just sleeping, but actually resting and sitting in his presence and enjoying my life with him, then I'm not able to show up here in the way that I is fruitful.
Right.
And he made it so clear when he said, I care about you more than the mission.
Mhm.
And I care, like I want to take care of your needs. And then again, from that overflow, then there will be fruit and other that will touch other people's lives.
Mhm.
And I've really come to learn just how important that is. And some of the practices are, I think people get so in this habit of connecting to God looks like reading your Bible. And absolutely. But, I don't go in the Bible looking for God. I take God with me and say, show me what's in this word, And when I go to the grocery store, before I get out, I say, God, when I go in here, help me to stay focused and nourish my family and my bank account and just stay on task and remind me, when I'm in the kitchen cooking, same thing. I'm like, I've got a bunch of stuff, but I don't know what to cook. God help me, because people don't think about that living with Christ like that through the Holy Spirit, but that is literally how we were designed. We were
Right.
designed to live in communion with God and communication with God and constant communication. And so it's like it changes from the setting from, oh, I've got to cook for my family to, oh, what are we cooking? And it's going to be fun. It's going to be nourishing, you know, and it just a completely different perspective, right?
Mhm.
Living in connection to the source. And then from that, the fruit is produced,
Mhm.
not trying to perform and be good enough for God so that he'll use me.
Right. Yeah, because he'll use you exactly where you're at. And the thing is like I tell this to people all the time, you don't realize the impact that you can be having on somebody's life just like in passing.
Mhm.
And one of the things I always like remind like my girls and everybody around is like the impact of just common niceness and just being open to like God's children and like serving your neighbor, because when my husband and I came down to Texas just to check it out, see if this is where we wanted to be, where God was like calling us to move into. I remember going into the grocery store and I came to a shopping cart impasse with this lady. And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, excuse me." And she's like, "Oh, don't worry about it. Have a great day." And I was like just any for those of you who are listening and not watching, like I've got a stunned look on my face, like, well, what? And she saw the look on my face and she's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, "You're just so nice." And I didn't realize because like I'd always grown up like, in a different place and just, you know, that common decency, like in passing, like sweetness, like had just been lost. And I didn't realize it, like how much I missed it until that like interaction with that lady in the grocery store.
Yeah.
And I told her, I was like, "You're just so nice." And she was like, "Are you not from around here?" And I was like, "No, I'm not." And she's like, "Okay, well, have a good day." And she left. I just remember just being like in the silence of getting the snacks that I had come in for and walking out to the car to my husband and kids. And just like having this thought cross my mind of, man, what a rich life this would be if my everyday interactions with people were just like that. And I got in the car and I told my husband, "I want to move to Texas." And so, because of that interaction, my family and I made a decision that changed our life for forever and changed all of the girls' lives that now I get to have in like my salon space and what it is that we build. It's just a ricochet of the effect of just a simple moment of just being kind. And I also wish I knew that lady's name. Like, so I could be like, "Girl, you don't even know what you did." Like, she doesn't realize that that one moment changed everything. So like, not I love how you say like it doesn't have to be this like big like ostentatious thing. Like God will use you exactly where you're at, but you have to be open to it and be intentional with seeking it. Because unfortunately, I will say it is easy to go into autopilot, and autopilot, you are met with sin, anxiety, shame. It's easy to fall into the lies of the enemy when you're in autopilot. Like you have to be so intentional
Mhm.
in your relationship with God. And like, I love that you shared that because you are intentionally bringing him in to every little detail, every little thing that you're doing. And it has produced so much fruit from it. Like, because now you are a sounding voice in an authority in your area of what is possible and what God can do in your business when you invite him in and you hold space for his children.
Yeah. Yeah. It's, you know, all I kept thinking about when you were talking about just the presence,
Mhm,
and it's true. When the Holy Spirit is within someone, you don't have to, a word doesn't have to be spoken.
mhm,
It's in the way that you care for people and serve for people and show up, when I was in the hospital in November, and there was an EMT, and then also my husband. Um when I woke up from being on the ventilator, the Lord showed me at first it was Jesus, and he was holding my hand and then touching my forehead and then looking at his watch, and he would, come over and, talk to me. It was like beside the bed while I was on the ventilator asleep. But then it changed into my husband, and it was like he was showing me how Jesus shows up in people,
mhm.
through the way that we serve and the way that we love and the way, and that presence can be felt again, even if a word isn't spoken.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, on that same note, shortly after I was out of the hospital and recovering, I was driving to Oxford one day, and there was an ambulance passing with the sirens on. And when they got up close, I just put my hand up to the window and I just started to pray and declare God's peace and protection over whoever was on there. And I just broke down crying. And the Lord was like, I had people doing that for you, because they transferred me from one hospital to another when things kind of got worse. And I was unconscious, but God had people, he showed me I had people that stopped and pulled over an ambulance to pass that were praying for you, strangers. And that's how we're meant to live. That's God's love.
Mhm. Well, and I feel like you just dropped a bomb on the audience. Like, what happened? Like, that if you don't mind sharing,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah. I started out, it was flu and strep. But I had been to a friend's wedding. I got started, running a fever, all the typical flu symptoms. And then I started having trouble breathing. And I have dealt with asthma in the past. And so after some time, I thought maybe I need to go to the hospital and get a breathing treatment, because something's not right. So I went expecting to get a breathing treatment. When I got there, my background in nursing, I saw the pulse ox, it was in the upper 80s, and I was like, oh, this isn't good. I don't know what's going on here. And we did a couple breathing treatments. Nothing I wasn't responding to, and so they admitted me to the ICU, and then my blood pressure shot up, so they put me on some morphine, and next thing I know, I wake up 6 days later and I had been on a ventilator. It was a status asthmaticus, and so the treatment for that is actually to put you on a ventilator so that your lungs can rest. Um, I don't know all the ins and outs of why it happened. I do know that I was not fully, I was, I'm gonna have to go into it,
yeah,
but
do
I
it,
feel
girl.
like when I went into the hospital, I came out a different person.
Mhm.
God had already been shifting and changing and renewing and healing, but it's like I didn't walk out the same. I walked out, I feel like a new person, a new version of Bria that I've never been before. And before I went in, what was different was that I had been dealing with fighting the spirit of fear my entire life. Anxiety, crippling anxiety, ruminating thoughts, worrying about everything. And that came from a traumatic childhood where I did not have a father or mother that made me feel safe. I did not have those experiences that made me feel safe and protected. I did not have a faith, a place of worship where that was teaching me God as a father rather than, in the sky.
Yeah.
Um, and I was carrying everything, right? And all the fears that come with carrying everything. And it was like, I went in, and when I woke up, one of the first things I saw, and I'm probably getting emotional, was God in the form of an eagle. I'm not saying God's an eagle. I'm saying he was in the form of an eagle. And he had this wingspan that was infinite.
Mm.
And his wings were wrapped around me. And you think of Psalm 91, he'll cover you with his wings, and under his wings you will take refuge. And I saw the face, and his face, when he looked at me, it was so sweet. It was a father. It was a father who deeply, deeply, deeply loves his daughter, cares about everything that has to do with her, right? And then, but when he looked at everything that was trying to attack, it was like this authority that was like, no, you can't come here. And that image, it's like now, I mean, when those fearful thoughts come or those worries come, I'm like, no, I'm
Yeah,
sorry, but
no.
no. I mean, I just saw my father with his arms around me, like he showed me who's in control. And it healed me, and he told me, he said, I've healed your mind. I broke every chain. And it's been, like I said, it has been walking this out with him for years. I mean, our walk in this way started in a mental hospital right after I decided I didn't want to live anymore, and that was 12 years ago. And then this happened last November. So that whole time I was walking with him, growing, learning, changing. And then it was just like this shift. And I'm not saying everybody's going to end up in the hospital. I think
Yeah.
it was just right, like it's like we expect that when we start walking with God. I think the church sometimes makes us feel like you need to be a new creation, get it together. But what God showed me is like, he's got to unwire those beliefs and all those things that have been formed.
Mhm.
And he can only do that if we come and sit with him and we
Mhm.
get to know him, because it's like, I'm not going to trust you with all my deepest, darkest secrets if I don't know you,
Yeah,
And
totally.
so it's like, I got to get to know you. But yeah, so that happened. It was scary and it was difficult. And, when I got out, like some of the drugs that they had me on, really deteriorate skeletal muscle quickly. So I like couldn't even lift my hands over my head. I was scared. I was like, am I even going to get back into the treatment room? But God was like, speaking the whole time, you're safe. Don't worry.
Yeah.
Everything's okay. It's going to be like it never happened. And I get stronger and healthier. And like, it would take up the whole podcast if I told you just what God has done from that situation since November. So I can only imagine.
Totally. Well, we'll just have to do a part 2. That is so beautiful. I love that so much because sometimes it takes us like getting to our knees ultimately and being in a place of like weakness, right? For him to truly show you the power and presence that he has for you in his life or in your life and what he has in store for you. And I just love that image of him putting his arms around you and
Yeah.
being like, It's like
And the
that
way,
is it's so validating because that is so God. Like everything that we think it's got to be this super long, detailed, over complex thing. It's like I always can tell it is God when it's like so simple and like, no, it's like,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, when it's just, yeah, and that's the thing is like for a long time, a lot of the fear came from fear of getting sick and dying,
Mhm.
and I think some of that even more so after you have kids, right? Because you're like, I need to stay, I got to take care of these kids. Um, and, just all of that, right? And it was like, I got sick, pretty sick, and I
Yeah.
didn't die, and I was okay, and I'm getting healthier since then. So it's like, you see, he did it all, and yeah, it transformed my mind for that fear to let go. And I'll tell you another thing while we're on the topic that God showed me. I've been on a blood pressure medication for years. I mean, since I had my daughter at 19, my blood pressure has been unstable. I've avoided medication for a while, and then I got to a point where I had to have it. Um, and the Lord just told me the other day, he's like, you won't be on this next year. And he showed me that because of the shift that's happened of me being able to relinquish that control and that fear, my blood vessels, everything's going to kind of come back into balance. And, he's going to be able to fix that.
Yeah.
And I point that out because that was amazing to me. But it also shows that aside from him and getting back to that place, everything else is just, it doesn't last.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's not for forever, especially when you are like open to receiving the healing that he has in store for you,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he is the ultimate healer, you know.
He is. He
That's
is.
why, like with Heal the Industry, I'm like just pointing it to him, you know.
Mine too. Because I'm like, God, if you were not running this page and all of this, I would not do it. I would not like,
uh,
no.
no way. Like, absolutely. So I'm curious. I mean, I know because I follow you on Instagram, but so this next chapter and what God is like preparing for you. So what's this looking like? What are you feeling like led to do looking into the future and what it is that he has put on your heart?
I just want to inspire and educate more estheticians that want to practice this way. I don't want to hold anything back. I don't want to gatekeep. I want to compete. I want a community. I want people to be empowered to build together, because it's like I alone cannot do this. You alone cannot do this.
Mhm.
We need to be a united front, and I believe that God has positioned recently the kingdom to walk in victory. What he's been showing me in the spirit is just a huge banner of victory over God's people. And it is, for so long, the church has walked as a victim,
Mhm.
kind of crippled by that, feeling defeated, feeling like we need to close our mouths. And I do believe that part of that was a pruning, to be able to remove parts that didn't need to be so loud, right?
Mhm.
Parts of ourselves that weren't actually God or true reflection of God's voice. But now, as he is, you know, using his people in a new way, as he's freeing people and delivering people, we're going to really walk in authority and boldness, but with a heart of humility that serves people and doesn't reject people, that can have conversations in peace
Mhm.
and can give grace and mercy and love, just be who we're meant to be.
Absolutely.
And, like, again, whether it's the word spoken or just the presence that you bring from knowing him.
Mhm.
And I just want to help in that movement in any way that I can. And I've just recently created a prayer circle. God had been putting it on my heart to do this. And I'm like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how this. He's like, just go. And I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go. And so I get out of my way and I just make a post. And it's, I think it's gonna be great because we're just facilitating a space where estheticians, massage therapists, cosmetologists can come together or know this industry, so we have that in common, but pray over each other, intercede, teach about intercession,
Mhm.
how to pray from a position of a watchman strategy, right? As stewards of business, we need to know these things. Kingdom business, as
Mhm.
stewards of kingdom business, we need to know these things.
Mhm.
And so educate devotional style on that. Yeah, just kind of whatever he leads, and then just put out more information. I like doing the ebooks, just creating things that people can have as resources to help them along, the path they're on.
I love that so much. It's so good. It's just so beautiful to see what he's doing in the industry and how he's like using those who are like open to just being like, I don't know the way. I just will like use me just like obediently. Cause I mean, really like it's not an area that's been tapped into in our industry before, is bringing ministry into the industry. Right. Oh, that's
Mhm.
really, I love a good punny. um, but it's just realizing that, okay, I'm just going to get out of self and in you, and I trust that you're going to lead this and that you're going to bring people along that want to be a part of that conversation. And I have to say, I completely agree with you about like how there needed to be a season of pruning, and how we needed to get to a space of holding space like for people, because I completely agree with that. Like there was a season where like we said before we got on the podcast, I just kept him here in my heart because he was my safe place in a rough childhood as well. And I didn't want anybody to try to like take that from me. But I remember one time I was like on a training call and I saw one girl on the call mention God and say God, or whatever you believe in, like it's fine. And I was like, oh man, it's so sad. Like our God is meant to be a big, bold God. And like it's okay to just like own that. It doesn't mean that you're gonna force him like on people. I believe God has his timing with all of his children. I've seen it in really young ages. I saw it in my own father, like literally hours before he lost consciousness and then later passed away. Like God met him then. Like it's never too soon, it's never too late. But like always speaking his name, but not in a way that it's going to make someone uncomfortable. It might make somebody curious,
Yeah.
and
And
be
when
open.
yeah, I mean, because when I speak his name, it's because he is a part of my everyday life, just like my kids and my husband. So I'm going to talk about him,
Yeah.
but I'm not talking about him to try to convince you of anything. If you want to know more, I'll tell you,
Yeah.
but I'm just going to talk. I mean, and that's the way it's supposed to be. It's just fruit from our surrender. I always go back to that picture of Mary and Martha running around and doing, and she's like, Mary, get up and help. And Jesus is like, no, she's right where she's supposed to be. She's sitting here worshiping me at peace,
Mm-hmm.
and the fruit will just, it will flow. It will all flow from that.
Right.
Um, and yeah, so it's when you are not trying to perform and you're just abiding, it
Yeah.
just flows. And the thing is that God knows where they're at. We don't know where they're at, but God knows where they're at. And
Yeah.
so he'll make sure that you show up at the right seed at the right time,
Mm-hmm.
because he's made the ground fertile. And I'm not trying to plant stuff a seed in some hard ground, like get there.
Totally.
That's good.
It's just being who you are and show like being that light of what he's done for you, and just holding space for those who are curious, which is all that I ever do, and I pray everybody ever does. It's just be in a place that is truly God and not like a man-made God. Have discernment around that and just being open.
Yeah.
Um, well, I love that so much. This was so fun. We for sure need to do a part 2 because I feel like there's just so many things that we can be talking about with this. And I want to hear your longer story
Absolutely.
about like what's changed for you like already. So we'll already have to schedule a part 2, guys. So don't be sad that we're over. This is just the beginning. Um, but I always like to finish the podcast with asking one question of if you could have one prayer like instantly come true, like wave a wand over the whole industry and just heal one thing, what would it be?
That all endocrine disruptors would be removed from products, because I am saddened by the symptoms I'm seeing in these young girls. And yes, a lot of it is spiritual, mental, but we got to do what we can.
Mhm.
We need to help to help people to be more regulated, to, because that's going to be the most anti-aging, if you will, thing that you can do, is help people to be more peaceful. But yeah, the that's just what comes to mind, like I'm seeing 16 and 17-year-old girls with, you know, symptoms of PCOS in their skin, and then, hair growth patterns and things that you used to not see, to 40s and 50s. And what they're using loads of products, and we can't deny that that's a part of it. And so I'd like to see those disappear.
Yeah, totally. Like, get that going. Well, I would love some product recommendations. So once we're done with this podcast, like, stay on because I would love to get some.
Okay, absolutely.
It's so hard because there's like, it's almost like there's so much, like, it's this decision fatigue, right? And also, I mean, like, I'm a curly hair girl naturally, and curly girls buy like all the products and have them all under the sink and they don't work. That's how I feel like I've become too with like skincare products, is like, I've got all these things and they're all under the sink because they don't work.
Right. And the thing is, as we advocate for cleaner services, cleaner products, the industry will have to shift. It's like if we create the need for these cleaner products, then people are, we're gonna set a higher standard for product formulators
Yeah.
because we're not willing to budge and use things that are not aligned. And, and that's I'm just hopeful that that's the way that things are headed. And again, as we push forward and say, we won't use this if
Yeah.
it's not this way, then they're going to have to change.
Yeah, yeah, and then I love that because it's so true. It's just we as an industry just all need to get on the same page, like even playing field, and like yeah, they'll have to like adjust and abide, like because I know we look into that like with hair color that we use and like product lines that we offer is like how can we be clean so we can be aligned, right? Like because it is so important, and being intentional with that is huge. And I'm a huge fan of community over competition. So leaning into like your neighboring communities, getting into social media and connecting with other people and figuring out like, hey guys, like let's just all work together for the common good of what it is that we are going after. And like we'll win for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Okay, so our audience, like where can they find you at?
Well, I have a TikTok account and a Instagram account. It's Sacred Beauty by Bria. And then I have a website, sacredbeautybybria.com. I offer virtual mentoring calls. They're all I'm kind of restructuring them now, but we can go over anything from protocols to prayers and, how to incorporate prayer and spirituality into your services more or hold more space. Switching products over from, to clean all natural. This morning, I was working with a client who we're going to build an apothecary style treatment room in her space. So what all needs to be on those shelves and how you can use it in your facials. And then, I always allow God to lead, so like in that same session this morning, we were kind of finished our conversation a little bit early and I was like, God, is there anything else you want? And he was like, yes, I want to talk to her. And so we went into prayer and inner healing. And it's just, yeah, I mean, it was just, if you give it to him, like he's gonna do it the best,
Yeah,
it's just yeah.
yeah.
So
And just hold space for people to like feel and to share that. I will say, like we had a client that was in and she was going through heavy stuff. And you could just tell there was something that she wanted to say out loud. And she did. She was like, I'm just so mad at God. And I looked at her and I'm like, that's okay.
yeah.
And she's like, oh, you could just feel this like weight come off of her. I was like, it doesn't mean that you don't love him and you aren't like grateful for him, but it's okay for you to be mad at him. He's a big boy, and it's just amazing where when you can just hold space for people to just honor what season they're in and what they're going through and like giving them permission to be like, it's okay. Like, oh man, it was so cool. Like, I was so grateful for that moment and like to literally physically see the relief over her and like the freedom from just saying that. And I was like, but there will be a season where you're not mad at him and you need him, and then he'll be there for you. He's not going anywhere just because you're mad. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what he's made very clear in my mentoring is that, again, they are more important than the mission.
Yes.
So let's make sure they're taken care of too. So,
Totally. Like, just honor where they're at. They're frolicking around like Martha, like, just let them. It's okay. It's exactly where they're supposed to be.
amen.
Well, thank you so much for being on here. We're for sure going to have to connect and set up another episode, but I'm so grateful that we got to experience your beautiful light today, and I'm excited for what the future has in store for you.
Thank you. You as well. Thank you.